These are going to be the very best tips that you can get for passing the CFA exams. We'll spend some time specifically talking about the level 1 CFA exam. You should know that none of these tips are quick ways or hacks to pass these exams. They all are going to require a lot of effort, a lot of discipline, a lot of work. Just like any other thing in life that's worth having, the CFA exams are going to require a lot of work. Closer to the end of this video, I'll talk about what I've always called as the secret to passing the CFA exams. I believe it's the second most important factor, but the number one differentiating factor between candidates who are not able to pass the level 1 exam and candidates who do clear it. So make sure to stick around until then, and you're going to drastically increase your chances of passing your upcoming test. I passed all 3 CFA exams on the first attempt, so I'll tell you exactly the things I did to make that happen. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. This is just going to be the honest reality of the best ways to prepare to make sure you have the highest chance of passing. There's a good amount of content out there on the internet right now covering this topic, and this video is meant to be a culmination of all the best tips and tricks and best ways to study. The number one most important factor in your ability to pass any CFA exam is going to be putting in the hours. Everyone has always talked about 300 hours being the standard. There's even a website named after that common notion, 300hours.com. But what I did, and so my recommendation to all of you, is going to be to study more than that commonly prescribed 300 hours. For the level 1 exam, I ended up putting in about 470 hours total, and the reason I know that is because I tracked it. Tracking the amount of hours you've spent studying is a great way to keep yourself honest about how much work you're doing and how much work you still have to do to get to the point where you maybe need to be to pass an exam. It's going to take you a little bit more time to actually write the hours down, sure, but I think I spent about 9 seconds after every study session just plugging in a 3 into my Excel sheet, logging the hours I spent studying. For me, the study schedule was 3 hours every single day, starting from December 1st until the middle of June when the CFA exams used to be held. So that was about 6.5 months of 3 hours every single day, never skipping a single day. Never missing a single day was a very important point to me. And it's not necessarily that each 3-hour block is crucially important to your ability to pass the exam. So if you missed a day or two, it probably wouldn't change the outcome of your CFA exam results. It's more about the principle of the whole thing. If you allow yourself to start skipping 2 or 3 days here and there, you will certainly allow yourself to do that multiple times over the course of a 6-month period. And at the end of it all, you could very well cost yourself 50 to 100 hours just because you skipped some days every once in a while. It's just not worth it. If you're already studying like 6 days a week, just be consistent with it and go every day. Not only are the number of hours critically important, but also the quality of your studying and learning during all those hours has to be good. So for me, if I had a 3-hour session blocked off, normally it was like 7 to 10 p.m. on weekdays and weekends actually in the evening. But let's say I got a text message with a link to a YouTube video and I talked to a couple friends in a group chat and I spent 15 minutes watching the video, I probably just cost myself 20 minutes out of my study session. 20 minutes out of a 180-minute session is like 12% of that session. So at the end of the 6 months, if I did that every day, I would have costed myself about 50 hours of study time, and that can definitely make the difference between passing and failing. So any instance in which I spent a handful of minutes during my 3-hour study session not studying, I would tack on that additional amount of time to the end of the session. And trust me, if you adopt this practice and you find yourself spending 30 or 45 minutes doing things you shouldn't be, it will really incentivize you to not waste any time in future study sessions so that you don't have to tack on all these extra minutes. They need to be good quality hours, and you need to do a lot of hours. But when you do those hours in your weekly schedule, I don't think is all that important. Some people like to study like 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. Like I said, I did 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. every single day. Other people work really long hours during the weekdays, so they'll study like 10 hours a day Saturday and Sunday and none during the weeks, and that might be okay too. As long as you're getting, in my opinion, 400 or more hours, they're all good hours, and you're very consistent with that study schedule, that's probably half the battle in your journey towards passing the CFA exams. Now, I totally understand that it can be difficult to be that consistent, to literally study every single day for 6 months or 6.5 months without missing any days. But hear me out here. It's only difficult to be consistent with something if your frame of mind towards that thing is not a baseline level of consistency. My favorite comparison to make here is to your regular day job, your 9-to-5 job. Nobody wakes up in the morning and goes,
I don't really feel like going to work today. I'm gonna sit at home all day.
At least nobody that's worth hiring for any position, that is. And why is that? It's because of our perceptions around our responsibilities in relation to our job. You just go to work. You don't have any other choice on days that you are working. You go to work, you do your job, and that's the only option. So to be consistent and disciplined with your CFA study hours, if you can shift your frame of mind when you think about the importance of your studying to be exactly equal to how you feel about your day job, then you'll never miss any days. And I definitely thought about studying as a second job. So partially jokingly, I would tell people sometimes, no, sorry, I gotta go to work, rather than go do something with them in the evening. Obviously, I'm not going to work, I'm sitting at home at my desk studying, but I did view it this way. Studying for the exams was a second job for me. I had to work that second job 3 hours every single day of the week, 21 hours a week I put in, and I did not allow myself to ever miss any days of work. I'm sure most of you watching this video have done something like go to university classes or go to a job for 6 months without missing certain days that you were supposed to be there during, so you can certainly do it with studying for a CFA exam. Now let's talk about how to best structure each of your study sessions to most effectively learn the material as you progress through all the books of the level 1 exam, for example. This is an area where you can be pretty flexible. I was very linear about how I progressed through the content of the CFA curriculum. I always started with ethics and just went in order throughout each of the books. The routine for my 3-hour study sessions each day specifically involved reading through or watching through a certain LOS, either with the content or a video lesson from a test prep provider that I'll talk about later. Then after I would read through the study notes or watch the video lesson, I would do the practice questions provided by the test prep provider that are sort of baked right into the lesson that they're presenting. And I would do that for every single topic in a book. So if we're talking about fixed income, I would watch the video lesson for fixed income chapter 1, do all the practice questions, make sure I understood it. Then I would watch the video lesson for fixed income chapter 2, do all the practice questions, make sure I understood it. It would take from maybe 4 to 8 weeks on the high end to get through all the content and hopefully digest a good amount of the material. Then after covering all the information throughout the entire fixed income book, at least the abbreviated versions of all the information through the video lessons and study notes, I would go to complete all of the blue box examples and EOC questions from the CFA curriculum. If you're a potential future candidate and you haven't actually studied for any of these CFA exams yet, you won't know what I'm talking about, but blue box examples come out of the CFA textbooks, and they're basically a case that reviews some contents of a specific topic that you're learning about, and then it'll ask you a few questions about that topic. There are anywhere from 5 to 50 questions after every chapter, and they do a really good job at testing you on the curriculum that you just read through. So again, for me, it was watch all the video lesson notes, take the practice questions that the third-party test prep provider provides in those video lessons. Then when I'm done with the entire fixed income book, for example, go back and do all the CFA text blue box questions and all of the CFA EOC questions. After the end of my 3 hours each day, I would just stop with where I'm at and pick up at the same spot the next day. I didn't really segment like today I'm going to finish this learning outcome statement or topic. Today I'm going to finish the next topic. Like I said, it was pretty linear. I'll make a point here now about third-party test prep providers. I do personally think they can only benefit you in your journey towards passing the CFA exams, and there are obviously a lot of options out there. In my mind, you can divide them up into different groups. The most expensive but potentially premium options are Kaplan and Wiley. They can cost over $1,000 for each level, but they probably have the largest quantity of questions in their Q bank and also the most time and energy that's gone into reviewing their study notes or video lessons that they publish on each topic. Then lower on the price scale, you have Mark Meldrum, you have IFT. Obviously, Mark Meldrum is a really popular option. People rave about the quality of a lot of his video lessons specifically. I don't know a lot about IFT or Bloomberg Prep myself, but there's some pretty good reviews out there online. Analyst Prep is another one that's a great value option. They give you a lot of material for a really low price. There are a couple other really low priced options out there. You can look into some reviews on those. I've done a couple videos on this channel specifically just to talk about different test prep provider options. You may have picked up on the fact though that I had a lot of faith in the test prep provider that I used because, like I said, I just watched their video lessons to digest all the content. Then I would use the CFA text for practice questions, specifically blue boxes and EOCs, but I never actually read the pages of the CFA curriculum. I just got the information sort of secondhand from the test prep provider's video lessons and then made sure I understood the types of questions the CFA Institute might ask about them. Doing it that way is not necessarily the quickest that you can get through the material, but in my opinion, it is the most thorough and it's still relatively efficient. I would certainly recommend that process to anyone. So the next part of this conversation, and a very important one as well, is mock exams. Ideally, folks should start taking their mock exams about 6 weeks out from their scheduled exam date. In 6 weeks, I think you can basically knock out 10 to 12 mock exams, not just take them, but also review all the questions you got wrong and then go back and learn the material on the questions you got wrong to solidify that information in your mind. You'll probably get 2 or 3 from your third-party test prep provider. You'll get 1 or 2 from the CFA Institute. The rest of them, you might have to find PDFs of old mock exams out there on the internet. I don't know exactly where to direct you to for those, but that's what I did 5 years ago when I was studying for these exams. Oh, and the CFA Institute sometimes has published the prior 3 years of actual CFA level 1 exams that were given, and you can use those as a great study tool to see what types of questions the Institute asks candidates. Now, I never used the mock exams like they were real exams, and if you choose to do them like I did, I guess you lose a little bit of value because it is beneficial to actually sit down for 4.5 or 5.5 hours if you give yourself a lunch break and simulate what the real CFA exam is going to be like. However, I feel like if you use the mock exams this way, you'll miss out on some of the learning opportunity that is to be had in going back and looking at all the questions you got wrong and then reviewing the material to see why you got it wrong and learn how to do it correctly in the future. So I just use them really as more practice questions, and I would take them in 10 or 20 question blocks for the level 1 exam, go through 20 questions, answer them all, then go back and score them, look at the answer keys, see how many I got wrong. Of course, mark down how I was performing across the exam, but learn what I did wrong in any of those 20 that I missed, and know that I can answer them correctly in the future. So really, you're utilizing mock exams as practice questions, and especially the ones from the CFA Institute will be some of the best resources you can get to give you the insight onto what types of questions you'll actually see on the real exam. Now it's really crunch time. Let's talk about the final week. I think about this as really the final 6 days because the exams used to be like the second Saturday in June. So Monday through Saturday, here's the structure that I followed and that I would recommend to others. Monday and Tuesday, I spent just 3 hours each day, like I always have been, reviewing all the questions I got wrong again on the 10 to 15 mock exams that I was able to complete over the past 6 weeks. So that Monday and Tuesday will serve as a great review process to make sure that when you missed a question and you went back and reread the material, figured out why you got it wrong and tried to cement it into your brain, it makes sure that you actually were able to do that. And if not, you're reviewing it for a second or maybe third time in this case to give yourself the best chance of remembering that stuff moving forward. And if you get to the point where every question that you had gotten wrong on any mock exam in the past, you now know the answer to, it's going to really build your confidence in approaching the final days before the exam because you're going to know that, man, you have answered a lot of CFA exam type questions correctly. Now, Wednesday and Thursday, just 3 and 2 days out from your scheduled CFA exam, is where you're going to utilize what I have always called the secret to passing the test. And this secret is especially beneficial for the level 1 exam because of how much quick algebraic type questions there are. Hopefully you can get some time off of work or you're just not working at all during this period because Wednesday and Thursday I'm recommending 12 hours each day for study. These 12 hours are going to be spent solely memorizing formulas. That's right, when I approached this Wednesday and Thursday, I had not actually memorized any of the formulas that I needed to pass the exams yet. And so in the prior 6 weeks when I was doing mock exams, I had been going back to my handwritten formulas or my formula cheat sheet during that whole period to correctly answer questions. Because memorization can be really fickle and only stick in like your short-term memory, I think it's important to not spend too much time on that previously, but rather really hunker down in the last 2 days that you're studying to memorize as many formulas and all the formulas that you'll need to pass. When you've gotten to this point, sure, you've done thousands of practice questions and hopefully 10 mock exams, so some of the formulas, maybe the Gordon growth model or something like that, are going to be cemented into your brain already. But the majority of the formulas you'll need to pass will not be. Now, to do what I'm going to tell you to do here, you're going to need a really great comprehensive list of the most applicable formulas that you'll need to answer any question on the level 1 exam. If you want to see the exact lists that I used when I was studying for each of the 3 levels, I have them available on my Patreon page, and I'll put that in the link down below. Keep in mind that the formulas I wrote into my formula sheets that I memorized to pass all 3 levels of the exams were 5 and 4 and 3 years ago, so they're a little bit dated. I did update them at one point, but they're not updated with the newest information for the 2022 exams. Even though they're out of date, I do think 90% or more of the formulas on those formula sheets could be applicable to the questions you'll see on your test. Now, if you've done a good job over the past 6 months at marking down every formula you had to use to answer any practice question, blue box, EOC, or mock exam question, then you probably don't need to check out the formula sheets I made because you'll have a really comprehensive list of all the most important formulas that you'll need to memorize. If you didn't make a comprehensive list, then go ahead and use mine, or you could buy a formula sheet from some of the major third-party test prep providers also. As a side note though, I've seen formula sheets from both Kaplan and Wiley, and I think they're way too long. There's too much material on there for you to completely memorize in a 24-hour period like I'm recommending, so you'll definitely want to narrow those down to the things that you feel are most important. The specific process that I recommend you follow to memorize all the formulas you might need on the exam is something I got directly from Mark Meldrum, and it worked really well for me, even from the first CFA exam that I took. What you do is get a consolidated list of all the formulas you want to memorize, your formula sheet, handwrite each formula like 10 to 20 times. Your hand is going to be cramping like crazy, but trust me, this is going to help you out a ton, especially for the level 1 exam. After you've handwritten maybe 10 formulas, so meaning you've written out like 200 lines now on sheets of paper, you're going to go back through that list and quiz yourself and make sure that you actually have those formulas memorized. Out of every group of 10, probably 1 or 2 of them you won't actually have memorized by writing it out 20 times, so just review it in your head a few times to make sure that you've cemented it in your brain. And you're going to repeat this process all day long. Write out every single formula 10 to 20 times, and then at the end of every group of 10, close your eyes and go back through them and make sure you can recite them accurately to yourself. These 3 and 2 days before your last CFA exam are going to be kind of suffering, but I swear this is the secret to passing. Candidates who do this, who memorize all the applicable formulas, drastically increase their chances of passing their upcoming CFA exam. Candidates who don't memorize all these formulas really, in my opinion, don't have much of a chance to clear their level. If you want to hear more details on this formula memorization process, I go into all that in my The Secret to Passing CFA Exams video on the channel. You can find it there. On the final day before your scheduled CFA exam, which historically was always a Friday because the exams were on Saturdays, you are going to rest. Just like God when he created the earth, on the 7th day he rested, right? You're going to want to rest. It might sound stupid, but it's probably the most beneficial thing you can do for yourself. I had this day off of work as well. I would take Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off work every year, the last 3 days before each CFA exam. And that's really important to, number 1, be able to memorize all the formulas like we just talked about, but also number 2, completely relax the day before your test. Wake up early, like 6 a.m. so that you're sort of adjusted to an early wake up time, assuming you'll have a drive to get to the test center where you're gonna have to sit down to do the real thing the next day. And do things you enjoy. Definitely don't sit around all day though. Don't watch TV and movies all day. You're gonna feel really groggy and tired, and that's not gonna be beneficial to helping your mind get the best rest. Wake up early, be active, do productive things around the house, maybe do laundry, dishes, cleaning, things like that that really make you feel good and accomplished. They require a bit of energy, but in general, your brain can be relaxed while you're doing them. On a couple of these Fridays, I went golfing. On one of these, I went to a movie theater and saw a movie that was sort of mentally stimulating, at least, so that, you know, your brain's not like sitting and rotting that day. The rationale here though is that there's so much content to each CFA exam that you can't possibly improve your chances of passing that much by reviewing another 1% of the material on the last day. However, if you're very well rested and you feel really fresh on exam day morning, you might do like 20% better. Your brain might be 20% more effective at recalling all this information that you've been learning for 6 months and reviewing for the last 6 weeks and 2 days if it's well rested. So it's going to be far more beneficial to you to feel good on exam day rather than staying up till midnight doing a lot of practice questions the day before to try to get slightly more prepared. On the actual exam day, I had a 2-hour drive to the test center. My wonderful wife would drive me there, and I spent those 2 hours in the passenger seat of the car going back through my formula sheets that I had spent Wednesday and Thursday memorizing. Usually 10 to 20 of those formulas I wouldn't be able to recall in the last 2 hours before my exam, so I would spend a little bit of time, make sure I refreshed myself on those 10 to 20 formulas, but now I've gotten myself to a place where I've answered every question correctly on like 15 mock exams. I know that I've perfectly memorized every single formula that I've used to answer any question on a practice quiz, a blue box, an EOC, or a mock exam. And if you can get to that point when you're walking into the exam center to take your CFA exam, your level of confidence is going to be through the roof, and you're just gonna feel like you can take on the world. And that's exactly the headspace you wanna put yourself in before you go in to sit down for that test. So follow all the steps I outlined in this video. They're not easy, they're hard work, but if you're serious about improving your chances of passing, doing all these things, in my opinion, will give you such a huge advantage over so many of the candidates out there who are not taking a purposeful, proactive approach towards their CFA exam studies, and you're gonna have a far higher chance of passing that test than the average candidate out there will. I hope these tips are beneficial to you. Best of luck out there as a CFA candidate, and thanks for watching.